Thanks for joining the presentation on using Creo Parametric and Keyshot for industrial design. My name is Bill, and I'll be the one that's going to kind of guide you through this. All right, so the agenda today, where the objective is to review how Creo and Keyshot is used for industrial design. So we'll do a brief introduction of myself, Foundry, and also take a look at these topics here. So we'll talk a little bit about the top-down design, skeleton model, the interactive surface design extension, the Keyshot Creo plugin, and Keyshot. And at the end, we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. My name is Bill Grossos. My focus here at Boundary is industrial design and specifically rendering in Keyshot. Some partners of ours include PTC, eTraj, and others. We are one of the 16 fastest growing private companies in Cleveland. We are a part of the PDSVision group of global companies, and some capabilities of ours include PLM, CAD design and consulting, simulation, and product development. Some awards of ours are the Inc. 5000, Weatherhead 100, the PTC Platinum Partnership. We are Windchill certified implementers, PTC preferred service providers, and we are PTC authorized and certified training partners for Creo, Windchill, MathCAD, and ArborText. Some software solutions that we cover are, of course, we got PTC solutions, Tacton, Moldx 3D, Xformation, eTraj, ITI, ZWCAD, Keyshot, Sigmaxim, and Sumerix. So again, we'll take a look at top-down design and how to use a skeleton to kind of drive design changes from the top level down to the individual components or parts. We'll take a brief look at ISDX, then we'll show how you use the Keyshot plugin, and then how to apply materials / shaders in Keyshot. So the image to the bottom left there is just a picture of a computer mouse that was designed using a skeleton inside of Creo. And then the image to the right is the rendering that was done in Keyshot. All right, so top-down design. This allows engineers and designers to control a design at the top level. It does require time and planning, so you kind of have to take your time, think about constraints, and plan how much information you want in that skeleton, and what you're going to provide in that skeleton to drive changes down to the components. One thing this does do though is if you take the time and you do a lot of the planning up front, in the end it will cut down design time when you make changes to the model, and it gives you a more holistic view of the product scope. So in this image, again, we see the mouse made in Creo. Then we see some sketches that we use to cut or trim the model and project onto the model. So we see buttons at the top here that we're using for the left and right mouse button. We have a trim down here for the housing for the battery, some buttons here on the side, and we also have some texture that acts as a grip for your thumb, and then on the opposite side as well, and also the palm in the back here. And then here to the left, you'll see that we have that skeleton part. It's not expanded, but if it was, you'd see a lot of different planes, axes, sketches, things like that in here that we're using. And then all that information that's in that skeleton part will be used or inherited by these different components that we see here. ISDX, Interactive Surface Design Extension. Creo Interactive Surface Design Extension delivers the ultimate integration of 3D design and engineering by combining the power of parametric modeling with the flexibility of free-form surfacing. You can now create complex free-form curves and surfaces directly within a single intuitive and interactive design environment. So in the image, the bottom left there, you can see that I also use the ISDX tool or feature extension to create a network of curves that connect to parametric sketches that I created in the normal Sketcher environment within Creo. And it's kind of a nice environment. It allows you kind of like this top, front, and side views that you can view, right next to each other. So if you're used to working in like, right in Rhinoceros or another package outside of a parametric software like Creo, you're used to getting those different views that you can see at one time. That kind of gives you a better idea of the different curves and how they're flowing. So we'll take a look at that environment once we get into Creo. All right, so now let's go into Creo, and these are just some final images that were created in Keyshot. All right, so let's switch over to Creo now. Okay, so this is the model. We see that we have our skeleton component and the individual components here. So these are all just created in the ribbon within Creo. So if I go to assemble, I can click that button, or I'm sorry, create, select that button, and you'll see if I go to part, I've already got one skeleton part created. So right now the skeleton model part is grayed out, but you can also enable within Creo to have multiple skeleton parts. But you just go here, select that, give it a name, and go right into it. And then same thing for the rest of the components. I would just start creating parts using create component in this window. All right. Right. But I've already got that stuff complete. So let's go up here now and take a look at the skeleton model. So let's drop this arrow and expand. All right. So you can see that I have a ton of different planes in here, right? A lot of which are hidden. Sketches as well, right? So you can kind of see that if I turn on my plane display and add that, what I had to essentially do here was create a framework using the axes and planes so that I can easily modify my model, right? So the very first thing I did was I established, which plane was I going to use to adjust the height. So that's offset, from the top plane, for example. Then I have my length adjustment here, the right length adjustment. So, before I started creating the model, I had to kind of think, what planes do I need? What axes do I need? What datums do I need to really push and pull, stretch this model? And and how can I create those datums in a way where it's easy to make a change to a model? So that's the first thing I did. I just established first, which planes I was going to use. If I had to create an axis to create another plane at an angle, for example, I did that. And then once I had those initial planes established, then I started to create my sketches. So you can see that right in here, I've got this first sketch, which is my profile sketch. So I can go into there and you can see that, I got that sketch created, and it's also created using those datum planes, the length adjustment left and the right adjustment plane, right? That sketch is actually constrained to those planes. So now when I adjust those planes, right, this sketch will update with that adjustment that I made to those planes. Right. So same thing as well with this top profile. So if I go in here at a definition, it's the same setup, right? So I've got my sketches here, and my sketches are linked to that left adjustment plane, right adjustment plane, right? And they're also linked to what I call my rear depth adjustment and front depth adjustment planes. So the idea here is that, once you establish all this and you have your sketches linked to your different planes that you've created, right? From there, you can just make adjustments to your model by selecting the plane, going into edit, and changing those dimensions, okay? But before I go on and do that, I'm also going to show you how, once I created these initial sketches within Creo, I also went into the style feature or the ISDX feature. So if I activate the skeleton part, right, you can see that once that part is activated, at the very top right, we see style, and that's the ISDX feature, right? So I just selected that, and we'll go into the feature right now. It's hidden, but let's select it, edit definition, right? So in here, right, you can see there's a whole network of curves that I created, and here's that 4-view layout that I was telling you guys about. So if I click that, we have the top view, we have this isometric / perspective view, this view here, and the back view. So you can kind of go in here and use these. This is really useful, for when you're trying to define your curves and say, hey, is this flowing the way that I want? It looks like it's good in this angle, but in that other angle, not so much. So it allows you to kind of tweak it here. So I can grab this curve, for example, right? Edit definition there, maybe pull this down and also view in this angle. So if I make a change here, like that, let me pull that, let me grab a different one. Let me pull a different, here we go. So when I make the change up here in this view, right, we also see that change being made here to the right and also below. So this is kind of nice for industrial designers, right? Because a lot of times as industrial designers, we're always about like the flow of the curves, surface quality. So, this is really a nice way to see the quality of the curve and then the resulting surface that's, created from adjusting that curve. So let's cancel that, and we'll just exit this 4-view layout here and go back here. So yeah, so we have some curves here that were kind of linked to the sketches that we already made in Creo. So if I grab this one here, you can see that I could select this curve, grab the endpoint, and go to the tangency tab. You'll see that right now I'm using G2 curvature continuous. So this is where you can kind of control like the tangency of it. If I select it once more, or let me try to change it. I can right click on it and change that to tangent instead, right? Cancel that. And then, so once you create all your curves, and as far as creating a curve in here, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but up in the ribbon, we have different curves here. We have curve, arc, and circle. If I select curve, I can just create a curve in 3D space anywhere, right? And I can right click, edit definition, and then I could go ahead and adjust those curves, right? But that's just one way to do it, right? Now, if I want to, I can also lock those curves down to a datum plane. So if I wanted this curve to be projected on, like the top plane, for example, I can change it to planar curve. Select that, select the top plane. References. And now it's on that top plane, right? So now when I make any adjustments to it, right, it's only going to make those adjustments in that top plane. Okay. All right. So yeah, so once you've created all your curves, you can also create a surface from those curves. So let's go in here and let's grab a surface. We'll take that one, edit definition. All right. So this is a surface that I created, and again, there's these tangency handles, these little arrows right here that we can change. So right now we have it set the tangent. There's position, there's curvature, and you can also add draft as well, and also on this side here. So to create these surfaces, you would first create your boundary curve. So I would select this top curve here, this curve, this curve, this curve. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And once I have those 4 curves, I can also use these internal chain curves, and those allow me to select other curves here, like this one, or this one here, this one, and this one, to further define the shape of that surface. So you first get the boundary, right? The 4 boundary curves in this case, and then you could use curves that intersect it to further define the shape, to constrain it, you know, as much as you want to. Okay. So once we're here, let me cancel out of this. All right. So let's just take a look at, you know, what we have here. So in the skeleton model, we also have these sketches here. So we have the left right button sketch that includes that left side, you know, and the right side for that button. We have this top button sketch here. We have this right grip sketch, and you can see that that's on a sketching plane that's at an angle here, right? So I had to first create another plane and offset it. And then we have this back pad sketch right here as well. These buttons down here. So I'm just trying to show that, you know, we have all this stuff defined, you know, within the skeleton model first before we start creating the parts. So we also have a trim surface. So we can take a look at that. And let me go up here and unhide these quilts. Yeah. So we've got a trim surface right here to trim the model, and then we have one down here as well. So this is all included in the skeleton part. Okay. All right. So once I have the sketches that I need, all my datum planes, all the datums, these extrudes that I'm going to use for trimming, everything. Once it's all set up here, right? Then what I have to do is I have to go into the individual parts, and I have to share the information, share the geometry and datums from that skeleton part to these individual parts that you see down here. So the first one that we can take a look at is the upper. Right, so this one here, I'll just activate it. I'll select that green diamond, activate that component, and once you do that, you have to go into what's called the copy geometry feature. So that's up here in the ribbon. So you can just select that from here. In this case, I'm just going to go into the feature since I already created it. Edit definition, and you can see here that what I did essentially was, and let me show the style surface. Essentially what I did was I selected this surface down here that's in the skeleton to use to trim, and then I also selected the surface that was created in the interactive surface design feature or style feature. All right, so the main surface that was created in the style feature, and also that trim surface, and then I have all the individual sketches. In this case, they're calling them, you know, chains. You have the edge chains here. So once I have all the quilts, all my chains selected, right? And again, I'm inheriting those from the skeleton model, right? I can click OK. All right, let me hide this one. And then once I do that, then I can start to trim out what I don't need, right? So in this case, I'm going to trim out the button. So in this trim example, with the edit definition, you can see that I selected the surface, which is the surface comes from the copy geometry feature. So I copy that surface into this upper part, right? Copy that in, and then I selected the chain for that right button, and then I basically flip the direction to the outside here, which removes the interior portion of that chain. Okay. All right, and then you can see that, you know, once I was finished with this, at the very end, we have a thicken down here to thicken the surface, and then, you know, basically, you know, I did the same thing for everything. So for the right mouse button, I've got my trim here, but this time, you know, instead of using the initial side for the removal, if I go to this trim, right, I now flipped it in the opposite direction so that I'm keeping the geometry or the surface that's within the actual chain. Okay, so once we have this, and once we've created the skeleton model that drives the rest of these components, we'll take a look at making changes. But I just want to show you first, and let me hide, how to use the Keyshot plugin. So if anybody wants to see how to install that Keyshot plugin, if they have Keyshot, we can take a look at that after this. But for now, we'll just go right to the one that I have set up in my system. So let's go right to Keyshot 10 and select that tab. And from here, this is the initial first time I'm going to render. I'm going to go over here to render, and you can see you can expand this, and you can export. We're going to go straight to Keyshot, so we'll click on render. And we'll just give it a second for this to open up. Okay, so here it is. So right off the bat, you can see that it doesn't really take too long once you open this up, right, from Creo into here. And then once you're at this point, we might have to adjust the offset here. But yeah, so let's go in here and apply these different shaders or materials that we see here to the left. So the first thing I'll do is I'll just kind of find some right off the bat that I know I'm going to use. I'm going to go find a, where's my rubber? Here we go. And I'm just going to drop, let me make sure I'm actually hiding the one surface. So if we go to scenes, the scene tab, and expand the model set, we can see the individual components here. So let me go into the different, let me go into this pad, and we're not only going to need the one, so let's hide. All right, so let's show that one. Then I'm going to go into the all right, so this is the one I want to use right here. Then on this side as well, okay. So once we have this, we'll start to apply the rubber here. So let's just grab that surface, and we'll just quickly, and we also have what's called Denoise now in Keyshot 10. Well, we've had this for a while, but we can also utilize the graphics processing unit. So we could use the graphics card and harness the power of our NVIDIA card now for the real-time render. And we'll also add this material to the back and here as well. All right, and then we'll come in here. I'll just kind of find a hard let's use shiny. All right, let's grab a shiny plastic for the buttons. All right, and I'm going to want a matte black for this. All right, and then I can also go back, let's add the shiny material here. And then we'll add a metallic color. So let's go up to plastics, or paint, sorry. Metallic, and we'll grab the paint metallic orange peel red. Let's use that for here. And we'll also use that here. So let's copy that same one here as well. So the idea here you can see is that, it doesn't really take too much time to really start creating this. So yeah, these guys, and I also want a clear plastic as well. So let's go in here, and let's go to clear, and I'm going to use this clear shiny, and I'm going to add that here as well. On the back, and I might have to go into the lights and add it to both of those surfaces. All right. Okay. So you can see that we have some intersection here, so I might have to offset that a little bit more so it doesn't intersect, but we can make that change now. So you can see that it didn't really take too much time, a couple of minutes or so to really apply those. And from here, we have a lot of options. You can go into your environments. You could add different lighting environments. You could add a backplate. You can also adjust your settings, right? And it looks like we have a hint of white here, so I have to go in here and let's go into, might have to zoom in here a bit. There we go. Okay, yeah, so once you have this, you can also adjust your lighting. So if we go here, you can see that we have it on the basic setting, but we could go to product, which ups the quality level here. Same thing here with the interior mode, right? Let's go back to product, and that should be sufficient for this. And then there's also settings to adjust your environment. So you can adjust the brightness in here. You can adjust the rotation of the lights or the environment around your model. So right now you can see that I can adjust using this dial right here where the highlights on the model are, where they're located. So you can kind of use this to get the best result for what you're looking for. Okay. Materials, you could always come in here. Like I can grab, if I want to adjust the material I'm using for this upper component here, I can right click that and come in here and where's my material, edit material. Okay. And then from here, I could go in here, I can make adjustments. I could add a texture to this, texture map to it, a label if I want to. There's also more refinement that you can add to this. So we have what's called the material graph. And if you select that, that shows this interface where you have these different nodes. And this is where you can get really complex to create a really custom, detailed, or a custom complex material that you couldn't normally create within Keyshot. So this gives you more control and an ability to do that here. All right. All right, so once we have that, I can kind of Control Z to undo changes that I've made here. So once we have that, and we go in here and redo, right? So let's, there we go. All right, so once we have this, we're gonna go back to Creo now. So let's switch back to Creo. And like I was talking about before, because we have the skeleton model, we can easily make changes to the skeleton that will, in turn drive the changes to the individual components down here that are sharing geometry and datums from the skeleton. So if I turn my planes back on, I can come in here and make adjustments, and I can say, hey, you know what? I want to adjust the length of the mouse, and I'm going to use the right length adjustment plane. So I'm going to grab this now, edit dimension, and we'll change this from 1.8 to 1.9. Regenerate. All right, and we just saw that rear end just popped out there a little bit and extended. Let's also take the plane that we created for the height. Let's adjust the height here. Let's bump up just a hair, 1.05. Control Z or Control G to regenerate the model. Okay, just make sure that actually, okay. And then we're also going to adjust, let's zoom in here. I also have the bottom profile adjustment. So let's take this, we're gonna bump this bottom sketch here to the left a little bit further. So let's change that from 0.2 to 0.17. Regenerate. Oh, so that bumped out just fine. And then now let's go now to, let's grab this plane. And this is the front depth adjustment. So I want to kind of get too much of a dip in here. I want to bump this out a little bit. So let's change this from 0.85 to 0.95. Regenerate. Right. And that just bumped out, right? Okay. So we just made some changes here. You know what? Let's come in here as well and let's adjust where the position of the middle mouse button or scroll wheel. So let's select that. Let's edit this, and I want to move this over here up into the right a little bit. So let's change this here. It's at 0.205. So let's just make it a clean 0.2. Hit enter. Control G, and it should bump it up here a little bit. All right, so it moved it up a little bit. So once I have this, make sure I regenerate, right? Notice that I made all those changes, and all those changes that I made to the skeleton, because all these planes and sketches are in that skeleton part, all those changes transfer down to these parts. So this is kind of good, showing that, this skeleton model is like the framework, just like we have a skeleton, which is made of our bones, right? That everything else is kind of meshed to in a sense, right? This works the same way. So everything kind of follows this, parent-child relationship between the skeleton part, and the individual parts that we see down here. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's hide these planes, and let's just take a look and see what changes were made once we, kind of stretched the model and pulled it. So it looks like this was bumped up a bit, so it's not really where I want it to be. This is also not following correctly in this area. So now at this point, I'll just go back up to the skeleton, right? And I can grab this sketch, a definition, and I got some dimensions here. So right now I can change this from, 0.9, for example, to 0.93, bump that up, reposition it, click OK, regenerate. And now that shifted and moved. And then same thing here, right? For this back pad sketch, I can now come in here, zoom in a bit. I can kind of reposition this and get it where I want it. So that's not too bad right there. Let's move that. Just bump it in a little bit. Regenerate. Okay, so now everything is kind of where it needs to be, right? This has to be changed a bit, so I can come in here too. This isn't exactly aligned the way I want it. So the idea too is when you're creating your sketches, right, you want to decide, how many dimensions you need, what dimensions you need, what dimensions you need to control your design intent to make it easy to adjust this model. So you might want to add dimensions in certain places, not add some in others if it's going to cause problems when you're trying to update your model. So that's one thing to think about. All right, but notice too that we bumped out you know, this area, right? But you know, we didn't necessarily bump out that button, right? It's kind of narrow in this area. So again, we can go back in here, you can come into this view, and you know, this is going to be a little bit more tricky because I have it sketched a certain way, but you know, you could definitely take these. You wouldn't want to start there, but you know, start here somewhere. Take an edge, bump that out. Bump that out a bit. And now when you regenerate, you can see that the size of that button, you know, just changed. It actually shifted and moved over here to the right a little bit. All right. So I'll just undo that now for a second. So what I want to show, and this isn't the design probably that I would end up with, I'd have to work this a little bit further, but once we make these changes, the really nice thing about this is that I can easily update the render that I currently have here using the Keyshot plugin, right? So this is the render, but these are the changes that we made. So if I go back to the Keyshot tab and I go to update now, and if I select this and I have the manual option selected, if I click on update, all I have to do is just select the top level here, just select the assembly. I'm a Surface 9, right? Select that, and then there's a button that pops up right down here, and we basically told it, you know, what we want to update, which is the assembly. We'll click OK. Then now if I go back to Keyshot, right, you'll see that the model changed, and those updates that I made in Creo are now reflected here. Okay. So I just wanted to show that, you know, it's one thing to be able to design in Creo. You know, it's one thing to be able to create a render, right? But if you can utilize top-down design and a skeleton model, please excuse the buffer that you hear behind me. Yeah, so if you utilize the skeleton model and the plugin in Keyshot, right? The idea is that you can quickly see the changes that you've made in Creo, reflected here in Keyshot. So it really makes it easy to get a good holistic view of the product that you're creating, so that you can say, hey, you know what, I kind of like where it's at now, but we really need to change the design so we can add more real estate for this button, for example. And we just did that, right? And we could even bring this out further here if we wanted to. Yeah, and that's basically it. And then you would just come in here and save this. So right now, let me flip back to my slides. Yeah, so if you want to reach out to me or sales and talk more about what you've seen today, it would be very easy for us to jump on a call with you, do a screen share, and kind of show you around a little bit, whether it's the combination of Creo and Keyshot, or either on Keyshot or Creo by themselves. We also have a channel on YouTube where we have a lot of great stuff to watch as far as how to use Creo. And I guess I'll open it up now. I'll open it up now for questions if you guys have any. All right, it looks like, all right, so there is a hand raised here, and let's go. Give me one moment trying to navigate the questions here. I need to expand something because I'm not really able to see the question that was asked. Oh, all right. why use the skeleton versus the master merge? Well, I mean, for me, that's just typically, how I've done it. It's been helpful for me to, create the skeleton part. Another thing that's good about it is that component, the skeleton component, if you guys use wind chill, isn't going to show up, on your production BOM or your manufacturing BOM. So it's kind of like just a hidden part that controls your feature. Yeah, you could even just create like a normal part and then create the same planes and axes and sketches, that I create within a skeleton part in a normal part. You can do that as well. So I guess it's just your preference there. Cool. So it looks like some people said it would improve their workflow, so that's nice. Yeah. So as far as one question came up about installing the plugin. If you guys want to see that, just send me an email. Let me bring that screen back up here. Yep. So here's my email right here, bdrosos@foundry.com, foundrysys.com. Sorry. Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining. Like I said, if there's anything else that you guys want to hear about this, reach out to me and we'll talk soon. Thanks.